I would try and communicate what I was feeling. And to one friend, I remember telling her like, oh yeah, I pretty much went mute as a kid.
Okay, welcome back to the Healing Works podcast. We're excited to be with you again and again.
And again.
And again. But we're happy and excited to have one of our dear friends, Lizzy Meidinger, on the show today.
Lizzy.
Lizzy. Not Elizabeth, though. Or is that
Sometimes.
You know,
does anyone call you Elizabeth?
No.
I almost called you that this morning. I almost said, hi, Elizabeth.
When I was born, my mom was like, she's a Lizzy immediately. I think like my great grandparents called me Elizabeth, but I don't think I've been called Elizabeth since like preschool, literally. I don't even know if my preschool teachers called me
formal.
Elizabeth. Yeah. I didn't even know how to spell Elizabeth. Like as you're learning how to spell and stuff, I was like, I don't know. I know how to spell Lizzy, but yeah.
Okay.
Liz.
Okay.
Lizzy.
Which means Kevin's going to start calling you Elizabeth.
I'm sure.
Maybe.
Lizzy Louise, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
All of
Lizzy
the
Louise.
above.
Yeah.
That has
Lizard,
a
you know,
great
like,
ring to it.
gets thrown in
Yeah,
there
our sister
too.
calls her Lizard. That came about
Yeah.
several
At the
months
retreat.
ago at the retreat.
Yeah.
But no, we'll explain how we know you.
Yeah.
And she is, she's a dear friend, and she's down here in St. George with us. She came down for the Iron Man, but it just so lined up that we wanted to have her on the show.
And you were going to be down here this
And we were going
weekend
to be
too.
down here this weekend too, so she stayed
Yeah.
with us
Instead of in my
as well. And yeah, she slept at our
car
house instead
camp.
of in her car.
I was like, you are not sleeping in
I'm
your
an
car.
adventurer. Car camping is great. You
I
know,
think that's awesome.
Everything is there where you need it. You have you just set up the back tent.
You can turn on your car if you get cold.
Exactly. Throw everything in the front seat while you're sleeping, and then you can
And you
get back in and
slide
drive.
down to the end of your sleeping bag because your seats are at an angle. So
That is the one downside of my trunk, but you make do.
Well, it's so cool because now they have all those, like, looking at it, or like a new truck or whatever, wrapped or whatever.
tents
Like
that
they
go
have
on
those
top.
tents that go on the bed, and it just sits on top of the roof.
Yeah.
And like, that's awesome.
Those are cool, but
Like, that would be great.
it would be. But my
But
car's
just in
free,
the car too.
technically.
Yeah,
I own it already, so
It's
I
true.
can just have my
It's
sleeping
true.
bag, and it's
Yeah.
perfect.
it's
Yeah.
true.
My
But-
friend puts like a mattress pad down, and that's elite. That's elite
is
car
next.
camp.
That is, that is elite.
the
But
next step up.
I don't mind sliding.
Right. There you go.
Lizzy legitimately slept in her car and ran the Moab Marathon. For those of you who aren't from Utah, Moab is just
It was like a trail
it
marathon.
was a trail marathon. She slept in her car the night before and got up and ran 26.2 miles on a
Eastern
trail,
Utah.
2,000 feet
Elevation. Yeah.
Or you gained.
Gained 2,000, lost 2,000 throughout the whole thing.
After
For 3
sleeping-
miles, I gained like 1,500. But
After sleeping in her car, and then she came home right
Yeah.
after 4 hours.
I showered and I drove 4 hours home. Yeah.
Oh, she is
It's fun.
way more adventurous than I am. So we invited her to our house to at least
Like, please
sleep on
don't
it.
sleep in your car.
I'm like, I cannot accept that.
Yeah. And then she's also a teacher, taught in Chicago, and we'll let you tell your
Yeah.
story. But she teaches, she homeschools our daughter, Brooklyn, our 5-year-old.
She's our
Big
personal.
shift in education, but I'm still
Yeah.
teaching. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
cool.
talk about that, how that came to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, great
We
connections.
went from strangers to very interconnected in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It went from seeing you on a call once a week to now on a Zoom call. Now you're at our house twice a week or more.
And your daughter called me Aunt Liz the other week.
Yeah. It shifted
So-
from Miss Lizzy to Aunt Lizzy.
Yeah.
Aunt Liz.
Dad,
Aunt Liz.
where's Aunt Liz? Well, it first started Aunt Lizzy.
Yeah.
She said, Dad, where's Aunt Lizzy? And I was like, oh, that was on that Friday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And now she
I
just
came
go,
around the corner. I'm like, you just got upgraded
Liz?
from Miss Liz to Aunt Lizzy. And now it's just Liz.
yeah,
Hey, Liz.
And she doesn't,
yeah.
and she is Brooklyn, not Brooke or Brookie.
I know, but I call her Brooke.
Yep,
You're calling me Liz, you're Brooke.
Yep.
What's up, Brooke?
Liz?
We're going
Yes, Brooke.
shortened
Yeah.
names.
But she loves it. It's so cute.
She's a cutie. She's super cute. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And now you're teaching her
Phonics.
phonetics.
Yeah, she
I'll
read
say
her first
phonetics,
book
phonics, and-
2 weeks ago.
Yep. And she just walks around the house and she's like, marshmallow.
Yeah.
M.
No. That was a good one.
Yes.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That's good. It's cute.
That is cute. Well, yeah, let's talk about how we know you.
Yeah.
How do we know you, Lizzy?
Where did this all start?
Where did this start? You know, and we were talking about this the other day. Like, I really can't piece together how I came about to find you guys, but thank goodness I did. You
Yeah.
know, but yeah, I guess I can just jump into my
So
my
you were in Chicago. You're from Chicago.
So born and raised in the Chicago suburbs. Like, I was born and lived 10 miles outside of the city, you know, in a pretty upper middle class neighborhood. You know, families upper middle class. Parents got divorced when I was super young, but, you know, on paper, we had a great life, right? Like, everything was, you know, provided, got to do all the sports activities, all that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of emotional turbulence. You know, when parents get divorced, there's two separate households, and we split time equally, me and my brothers, at both, which having two different homes is, in the best case scenarios, is hard and difficult to navigate that as a little kid. And, you know, my demeanor from the get-go, the moment I was born, was just easygoing, laid back, you know,
Laid back Lizzy.
laid back Lizzy. We like our alliterations here.
We do.
We do. But, you know, I was always laid back, and that was such a strength of mine forever. And it's still a strength of mine, but it led to, I don't know if being taken advantage of is too strong of a phrase.
It led to
but
being overused, and your strengths
Boundaries being pushed.
Well, your strengths overused become your weakness or your limitation. So
Exactly.
it was a strength, and then it was just overused by everyone around you.
Yeah, right.
Probably.
And I'm not, you know, the most boisterous person. I'm not always. I don't run the show, run the conversations. I speak when I want to speak, and I don't when I don't. And like, you're not gonna make me, you know, do something I don't want to do, right?
Speak, Lizzy.
Sometimes, but eventually it got to that point. You know,
Right.
I'm really, really close with my brothers and my mom now. Like, we have great relationships, but you know, my brothers are identical twins, and they're powerhouse beings, and in the best way possible, right? But you know, when you're the only girl and the youngest, you get stifled in that really easily, and it's to no one's fault. You know, it's just personalities.
Like
And I was
2 against 1.
right, yeah, and I was so easygoing that I was like, whatever, I don't really care to speak up, anyways. But then it shifted so much into limited my voice and limited my ability to speak, to the point of where I just really wouldn't. And it quickly became, I embraced the victim identity, like that I was a victim in my home, and I was I wasn't allowed to
You were silenced.
be. I was silenced. And as a kid, I didn't know, you know, you don't know how to express your emotions and articulate what's happening to you. And so I would hit really big extremes in like my social life as a kid, like in elementary school, middle school. I would either be really, really intense, really boisterous, almost bully-like to my friends, because I like needed to gain some power back
Compensating.
and compensate, right? And so for some friends back then, I was kind of the intimidating bully. And like, I remember in like 5th grade, I was like the girl that didn't know her own strength and would fight the boys and like chase the boys around like the playground. Like, I was like, they were like run away from me in fear, right? But then I would have the friends too where I was timid and very melancholy and like depressive even. And so I just didn't know how to just be. So I would fill in extremes of really like depressive and, my life's so hard. And I would try and communicate what I was feeling. And to one friend, I remember telling her like, oh yeah, I pretty much went mute as a kid. And like, when you hear that, you're like, yeah, okay, sure, you went mute. Like, but to some extent, I kind of did, like, because I lost my voice. I didn't physically lose my voice, right? But I didn't know how to express myself. And so that led into just a lot of having a hard time navigating relationships and knowing who I was. And I would describe myself as like a chameleon. Like, I didn't know who I should be. I didn't know what expectations I needed to fill. And so I would sit back, which is kind of my personality anyways, is to just kind of sit back and observe. But I would sit back and make assumptions of what people needed me to be.
Yep.
And it became a survival for me in the best way, because I became a, pretty decent student in school. I didn't ruffle any feathers. I never got in trouble. I was terrified to get in trouble, right?
You didn't want the ruler.
And, because
she's like, I'm going to be a teacher one day, and I am not going to want to deal with kids like that.
Yeah. No, I actually, I don't even know why I wanted to be a teacher. It didn't happen until I had already applied to college, and I was like, well, I guess I'll be a teacher. I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. But, it was, I just had to fit the mold because I no longer have a relationship with my father. We've been estranged for like, I don't know, 6 or 8 years now. But it was, an intimidating household to be in, and not, it was intimidating just because there was a lot of energy, and like I didn't know where my place was in that household. So I'm losing my train of thought, but like I would like,
in school you performed really well.
Yeah, I would perform really well. And because if I did speak up certain times, it was frowned upon. And so I just was like, okay, I know my place here. I know my place here. I can figure out my place all these other places. But it left me just kind of lost in who I was, because I was filling everyone else's identity of me, or what I expected them, what they wanted from me, that I stepped away and I was like, I literally don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I couldn't see a future. Like, I remember as a kid just being like, well, once I graduate high school, like, my life's over. Like,
because there's no plan. There's no.
I had no dreams of like, as a kid, I played lacrosse my whole life, and I was like, my goal is to go play at Northwestern, because Northwestern has a phenomenal women's lacrosse program. But beyond that, I was like, but I don't really think I do, because I don't see a future, and not in a like suicidal kind of way. It was just like,
there's no plan. There's no set structure.
Who am I? Where am I? And
is that because, do you think that's because of the expectations that you always lived to other people's expectations? And kind of like after that, there was like, well,
who's going to tell me the next step to take?
Who's going to expect me to do something, maybe?
Yeah, because like as a child, like, you're living up to those expectations. But, once you're out of high school, you're an adult now. And now you're running your own life. But I didn't run my own life at all. I just followed. I was a follower. And I would make up the pretenses that I had to follow for the most part, but yeah. I'd be like, someone made this rule for me. I'm like, who made that rule?
I don't know.
Nobody made that rule.
The rule maker.
Right. But it was, my childhood was intimidating, and things weren't said directly. And I was never, sometimes I was directly told to shut up, but like, nobody cares. Like, you're stupid. Like, you're, all that kind of stuff, negative, whatever. But it was all kind of unspoken of like, it would be a look, and like, you can read the room of like, oh, okay. I think I'm naturally really good at reading rooms. Right. And so I'm pretty introspective, I've always been pretty introspective as a person, but I could read the room and be like, okay, what you just said was not okay. And you better go lock yourself up in the room for a while to let that mellow out, because something bad might happen. And nothing, I was never, physically abused in my home or anything, but, and I'm speaking here more in my father's home. Not my mom's. That was good. But, it was you just didn't know what was going to come about and what was going to happen. So you better tiptoe and be careful and all that stuff in his house. And so, we kind of, as I was in high school, we lost our relationship. My brothers and I moved out of his house. We weren't really welcome in his home anymore. And that caused a lot of even more like lack of, who am I? Cause
it's almost like you don't want to be there, but you don't want to be rejected either.
Right.
It's like,
well, and even though I came across as a pretty passive, submissive person, which I was for sure, I still was kind of bullheaded and stubborn. And so when we moved out of his house, I was kind of like, fine, so be it. Great. Like, you don't want us in your life. Like, good, cut and dry, you're gone. And I compartmentalized it and was like, okay, cool, on to the next chapter. But then that led me to having, I was in a pretty toxic relationship in high school on both ends. I was using that relationship to cope with the loss of my father.
Right.
And so I was reactive and pretty much letting everything out on him because he resembled so much of what my dad was for me. And it was just really toxic, and it led to just more kind of turmoil of just, who am I? What am I? How do I let people treat me? Because it was so much of letting people do what they wanted to me, and then I had to respond and react, and it tore apart my friendships, and there's so many layers to it, right? I can't blame it fully on that relationship too, but I, come senior year of high school, I lost like all of my friends, and part of it because I was so engulfed in that relationship and that I didn't sustain the relationships, but I also didn't know how to sustain relationships, Right. I don't have a relationship with my dad anymore. That's for most people, that's your core foundation. So if you can't hold on to a relationship with your family, how do you hold on to friendships? And that led me to keep identifying like, well, I'm a solo person. Like, I don't need people. I can do everything on my own. And it was kind of like that in my childhood because I was okay. I was floating. And so, I didn't need as much support as maybe other people did in my life. So I learned to just solely rely on myself because that was safest. Because to rely on someone else to ask for help, people had other things going on. There was more stress, more chaos, and I was easy. So don't cause more problems because you're already easy and easygoing. So just
when you were going through those times, something that just came to me was something that I learned years and years ago when I was, in an abusive relationship where the therapist I was talking to at the time was like, you don't have fight or flight, or freeze. Like, you hunker down and like you rely on your mental fortitude to get through. Yeah, to grind it out and to get through the situation, and you talk yourself through it until it passes. Is that
completely
familiar to you?
Because
Is that what you feel like? It was just like you can talk yourself through it to get through whatever hard thing. It's like you didn't freeze or run or fight it out, but you just
that's it completely. Because to fight, I was not a fighter. I'm still not a fighter, right? And to fight would have caused way more issues. I could see that. So I would see it through my head. And to freeze, maybe I would freeze a little bit because I would lock myself up in my room for kind of emotional safety. But it was definitely just like, put your head down, grind it out, follow the steps and the procedures that society has told you to follow, like get good grades, get your homework done, go do the sports, go do the extracurriculars, and just so tunnel vision it that everything else can't penetrate it. And it's still, of course, penetrate because
it does.
It does, but
you learn to not be reactive to it. Like when I was going through my divorce, I got my hormones checked, and the doctor that was looking over the results was like, "You are depleted of all the hormones that give you energy and make you happy. Like, what? How are you still living?" I'm like, my mental fortitude is on point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I learned, I was conditioned for it.
Right. And I learned like what drained my energy and what, like, not that much energized me. Like, sports would energize me, hanging out with friends, you know, when I would get to those safe spaces, that would. But for the most part, yeah, I didn't have a lot of energy. And I was like, am I just like, you know, whatever? But yeah, absolutely. It was just mental fortitude just pushing me through. And it wasn't a conscious thing at all. It was just survival because I'm not a super boisterous person. Like, I don't have
it wasn't like grit and it was just like silent. It was like suffering in silence, but it's just getting through. Just
absolutely.
Well, then that makes sense too. Then if obviously living out of that state of survival that you couldn't see down the road, because that's what we talked about on the last episode, is that state of stress. And a lot of people, what happens when you get used to that.
Absolutely.
And like Althea was just talking about, you get so used to that and have to deploy such mental fortitude. But what happens is that becomes your neural baseline. And you become so conditioned to that high state of stress that then when there's peace and calm, it's like, oh, wait, we got to disrupt this because this doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
Right. But then that also explains why you're in that state of survival. Creation is not safe. Because that's how the brain works.
Yeah,
when
and
it's
that's
under
where
survival,
that's where self-sabotage comes in. It's you self-sabotage to get back to the familiar.
Right. And so, like, I even distinctly remember, like, I was such a carefree kid. Like, I'd wake up with a smile on my face every morning. I remember that, like, distinctly. Like, every morning I'd have a smile on my face, like, good morning, here we go, ready to go. And I remember I was probably, you know, around 9 to 12, I don't know the exact age, but waking up one morning and my dad being like, you know, I haven't seen a smile on your face to wake up in a long time. Like, where'd that smile go? Like, why aren't you smiling? And I had just let myself, the weight of the world just take such a toll on me and lose that light that it was just like, okay, hunker down, survival, lost all kind of creative modality and just kind of.
Well, you're checked out, right?
Yeah. It was safer to block it out and just be so far removed. Like, it was like almost like an out of body experience. Like, I was just watching my life happen more so than actually living it and being in creation and all of that. So
makes total sense.
That does make sense.
Yeah. So I was living in that like victimhood.
You get used to the program.
Right. Right.
And there's nothing else outside of it.
Yeah.
And there's those cool things along the way, right? It's not just
of course. No, it's
dreary,
not.
but
no.
the sports and everything like that. But still, as soon as you were done with the sports and everything like that, it's right back to
and you know, it makes it sound like my life was a super like depressing, like not fun. But you know, I have cousins that are around my age, and I was so close with them, and we'd have so much fun. We'd go on vacations. We do all these cool, fun things. Like, I had a really fun childhood still. But the underlying emotional current, right? Yeah. And you know, everyone goes through hard things as a kid, and everybody pulls trauma out of their childhood. But I think what made it the most difficult for me is I didn't have a sounding board to talk about it, or have someone be like, "Hey, what you just went through, like 10 minutes ago, was hard and not okay. Let's talk through it. Let's get you, that." Emotional support, because it was just chaos, and that was the new standard. Or someone
picking up on maybe how you're acting or like the vibe you're putting off. Like for my 19-year-old son, I'm like, dude, what's the anger about? And he's like, I don't know. You know more about my emotions than I do. Why don't you tell me?
Yeah.
You know? But like, I'm picking up on that and acknowledging, like, I can tell you're upset about something, and I'm sure you'll talk to me about it when you're ready.
Right.
But to have someone like see you.
Sure. And like, you know, I was really close with my aunts and uncles and grandma and all that stuff. So I had all those supportive things, but I even, you know, remember I could just see people looking at me and like pitying me and looking sorry. And I never really understood it. Right. And like, we had great times and we'd laugh and we'd have such a great time, but I didn't feel like I had the directed support like that, which, you know, maybe I did. And it just is how I perceive it now as an adult. Right.
Yeah,
but it's all perception. It's all how you come about. And
well, and most, you know, all of us growing up, you know, everyone, you know, parents, the extended family, everyone did the best they knew how.
Absolutely.
At the same time, most people aren't emotionally resilient. So if they're not emotionally resilient, it's tough to teach that and show that
Sure.
and recognize that in other people to say like, hey, what's up? Like,
yeah. And like my mom, gosh, she's such a powerhouse. I love her.
I shouldn't say most, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. But, you know, who my dad was such a turbulent person in all of our lives. And
Right.
I know for my mom, like she was doing her absolute best because he was causing so much conflict and issues and fear in me and my brother's lives that she was trying to help us recover without like pushing us away and like
Totally.
hearing all of, because you know he would say a lot of negative things about her towards her, like all that kind of stuff. And so she had to navigate like supporting us, loving us, making sure we all knew she was there for us. And I always knew she was, right? Like I could tell she was, but she had to do it in a way that wouldn't drive us away even more because we were so under the trans of my father and what that stood for. So
like under the control.
yeah. And
so she's taken those hits, those blows from him personally, and then dealing with the aftermath of you guys under his control. And that's a lot for a mom. I can relate to that a lot. And let's give a shout out to your mom that ran a 30-mile race.
32.7. She did a
Great job, Eileen.
50K yesterday. Yeah, she's awesome.
And she's how old?
She's not going to want me to share that age.
She's a mom.
She's a mom.
She's very young.
Yes.
She's a young mom that
she's
just
got 3 kids in their 20s. So she's wonderful. Yeah, she's a powerhouse.
That's incredible. 30 miles.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, she's so cool. She's the one that kind of got me into endurance. She is the one that got me into endurance sports because even though I played lacrosse, I was like, I hate running. I'm not a runner. I did cross country 2 seasons in high school, and I ran 2 races in the 2 seasons, and there's probably.
But you won both of them.
yeah, you could say that. Out of a team of 200 girls, I was probably the 5th slowest out of all 200 girls. So I was not a runner.
Yeah, but how many of them ran a marathon in Moab like you did? Probably not very many.
Probably not many.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
I know. I saw when I was back in Chicago a couple months ago, I was running on the lakefront trail and I ran into a girl that I went to high school. Actually, I think we went to elementary all the way through high school, and she was training for the Chicago Marathon this year. Cool. And I was like running at pace with her. And I remember her in high school being like a top runner. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm running as fast as her. Like, look at how far I've come. But but my mom's amazing. And we've had a lot of conversations throughout my now adulthood of just where things were and how we've, what mistakes we've both made and grown from it. And, we've got such a close relationship now. It's really, really awesome. And same with my brothers. We've come a very long way. I used to be scared of them. They were such like big, scary, intimidating guys. And I don't think that was their intent or their intention for me. But now we're buddies.
That's awesome.
We're buddies.
That's so
that is
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. My brother's getting married next summer, and I'm really close with his fiance now and stuff. So as much as it feels like, oh my gosh, like you're so like your childhood sounds so like negative and low. It really, on the outside, it really wasn't. Like I got to do travel sports and every sport I wanted to do. And we got to travel a good amount, like come out west to go skiing and all that kind of stuff. So as turbulent as some things really were, my mom really did her best to make sure we got to experience an idealistic childhood of being able to do what we wanted to do. And I am so appreciative of that because there's a lot of things I've done that were just so normal for me. And now as I get older, I talk to people who are like, I never got to do that. I never got to go there, So it's cool that through all of that, we still got to have a really fun and exciting like childhood too.
That's cool. A lot of good things that came from it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty, there's so many good times as kids, but I think that's pretty, standard. You're not the only one that came from a divorced household.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are pretty high as kids, struggling with that kind of stuff and then finding their personality and finding where they're at.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of things that, I didn't come my parents didn't get divorced, but like there was a lot of stuff like being
Sure.
bullied or getting made fun of, or, you know, not feeling
Yeah, we
safe
all
to open up
experience
or raise your hand in class because you don't want to feel dumb, or, you know what I mean?
sure.
There's a lot of that. And that's such a relatable story. So I'm glad you're sharing it, because I think that's a lot of kids. Like I can relate to that, because it's like there's a lot of times where I didn't feel. I'm very boisterous. If you haven't realized that already, if you don't know me on, but just hear me on the podcast, I'm very boisterous, and I've always, been outspoken on, things. I'd like to be funny in class and got in trouble a lot, but or frowned upon, whatever you want to call it. But there was a lot of times where, I can relate, where I didn't feel comfortable to say something, or, kids are mean, or it wasn't a safe space
Felt
to
insecure in a
create,
social
or
setting.
insecure, or things like that. So
Yeah. And I think for me, I just ended up making that my identity.
Right.
My identity was I don't have a voice. I can't speak up. I'm a victim. That was who I was.
or people don't listen to me.
And people don't listen to
Right.
me.
What I have to say isn't
isn't
important, or be
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah, exactly. And so finding you and finding the programs that I've done with you has allowed me to be like, yeah, of course that was my experience. But now I actually get to look back and notice how much fun I also had in my childhood and my life, and know that that was just a piece. That is not my entire identity anymore. That was just a part of my story. And I remember being younger when I would have to go to therapy, and I would like tell my story to them and just be like, wow, you're so strong. I can't believe you made it through all of that. And I was like, yeah. And like, how do you help me now? Like I was getting tired of retelling my story and over again, and all the
Hashing
trauma,
and
all the
rehashing.
issues and whatever.
Right.
And
Well,
it
and
was
what
like,
you know now is you're like, well, that was deepening the neurological connections in my brain.
Yeah,
and
yeah, and just-
nervous system.
Yeah, thanks for
and
making me tell it over and
Thank you
over
for
again,
reinforcing
because
that. Now I
it
just
made it
experience
a
it all over.
neurological belief, a hardwired belief.
exactly. And then it started to make me feel almost guilty for telling my story, because I knew the reaction I was going to get. And I'm not going into super details of, all of the crap I went through, because it's not necessary. I don't need to rehash all of the little minute things, because I'm not a victim to that.
Yep.
And when I would have to always retell it, I was like, okay, here I go, reinforcing the fact that I'm a victim and people are going to pity me and feel sorry. I was sick of being pitied and feeling sorry for it and stuff. And not that you shouldn't share your story and have someone to, be a support to hear it, and so they get to know you a little bit more,
Sure.
because your story matters, and the things you go through matter for people to understand maybe why you respond and react the way you do. But for me, I just reached the point of like, I'm sick of being that identity, and I want to move forward, and I didn't know how to move forward and change my identity to the awesome, empowering person I wanted to be, because I saw, once I got to college and I saw, oh wait, life does continue.
Oh my God.
Oh, there's something on the other end of the tunnel. of high
Yeah,
school.
there's adulthood. What does adulthood look like? I don't know,
Whatever you
because
want.
I don't know how to be my own person. I really had no idea how to be my own person. And so once I got there, I was like, oh, like I can create my own way, my own life. Like this
I
is
can eat what I want.
yeah, exactly. I know I can eat my own food. Like I went vegan for 6 months my freshman year of college because I was like,
you could.
why not?
Yeah.
And
Do what you
the
want.
meat and food at the university was not that great. The vegan options were actually way better than the regular food. So it was cool. Yeah. And then I started working out. And I was like, wait, this is really fulfilling. And this, I like what this is doing for me. This is good for my mental health and all that kind of stuff. So I started to see there was potential in me. I don't know what it is and what it could be or what it could turn into, but it started to make me excited. And it shifted from there's a hard line of my life's going to end once I'm out of high school. That's it. It's over. I don't see the path to, wait, I know that there's so much more. I don't want anything to end. I can't, leave this world yet. Like I have so much more to offer and experience and grow into. And I don't really think I was able to see that until really putting in the emotional work, going through like the next level experience. I saw it to an extent, but prior to that, through my like college years, but I still saw myself living a mediocre life and settling.
Mm-hmm.
I became terrified of settling, but I was doing it anyways.
Right.
And just like, well, this isn't
it's like you were aware you didn't want to, but you didn't know how to break out of that program. It was like the default.
Because I finally found some safety and security, but it was, the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the first time I really felt safe and secure, but it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, but this is safe, so I might as well stay here. Like, but I would still be like, you're settling. Like you're going to be miserable 20 years from now. If this is the life you continue, you're going to be settling. You're not going to be fulfilled, and you're going to be trying to seek things elsewhere, and it's just not going to be a good path for you. And it took lockdown and COVID to kind of give me the rude awakening of like, okay, like you have a lot of time to be with yourself to figure out who you want to be, and you have no one telling you anymore. Because I was like the chameleon, like I would just fall in line with what everyone else was doing just because it was the easier route than to stand tall and stand different. And so lockdown, I moved back home with my mom, and I like just kind of grinded things out. Not in like a really intense, like hoorah kind of way, but I was like, I have all of the time in the world to do exactly what I want to do without anyone telling me or inadvertently telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like they might not even realize. So, I really dialed in my nutrition and started like really lifting weights and strength training, 6 days a week and going on walks. And then my mom was like, hey, there's a Chicago running club that I'm going to join in, January. Do you want to join with me?
Is that where Mighty Fit was born? And Mighty Fit was born.
Mighty Fit existed prior to that. I made
okay.
Mighty Fit is my fitness Instagram. Yeah, and that was another thing too.
Mighty
is
though,
like,
and not spelled. It's part of her name.
yeah, my last name's Meidinger, so it cuts down to Mighty because Meidinger.
Mighty Fit.
Mighty Fit. I made it like junior year of college because I started really getting into strength training then, and I did these like 8-week programs where there was a community and people were like, follow me on Instagram. I was like, well, I don't really want to post this on my real Instagram. Like, nobody.
An alter ego.
Yeah, so I made an alter ego, and so I like made the Instagram then, but then it really took off like during like the pandemic. When in lockdown, and I used it all the time, and then it kind of became my main Instagram, but it was like private, and I didn't tell any of my friends about it. I was like, don't follow me. This year was the first time I ever let any friends follow me, and I still only have like 3 friends that follow me on it because I'm like, it's like my like fitness diary, right? Like I was like, I don't really care what people think. It was just a way to connect with people, but
That's
Mighty
awesome.
Fit came that way. Yeah,
That is cool.
MEIDY.
yeah, MEIDY
_fit.
Fit. Yeah.
Might get
Mighty
a whole bunch
Fit.
of new followers.
Come follow me.
Follow
Yeah.
Liz on her journey.
Yeah. But yeah.
Her next stop is Ironman
Yes.
in Oceanside.
Yeah, I'm going to do my first
training.
half Ironman come April. So
That's
that'll be
awesome.
cool,
So
too.
good.
Yeah.
That's my neck of the woods.
Ironman?
No, Oceanside. Oceanside. No, we were at
Cafe Rio.
Cafe Rio yesterday, and there was a couple behind us in line, and they had all the Ironman shirt, and he had an Ironman badge, and so Alfie was like, "Hey, like, what do you guys do?" Or
I said, "Did you compete? Did
Oh, did you
do it?" And he
compete?
goes, "No,
And he
we
goes,
we
yeah.
worked it. We volunteered. Our daughter did it yesterday, and our son-in-law's doing it today." And he looked at Kevin and was like, "You could do it." And
You
I was
could
like,
do it.
"He's
And
a
I was
little
like,
heavy for the run."
You might
I
sink.
sink in the water.
sinks when
Swimming's
he
difficult
swims.
for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, you got the arm span for it then.
Swimming's difficult. I used to run. But yeah, shout out to those that do
Yeah.
it because
Yeah.
I'm a
It's
little
fun.
heavy for that. I'd have to lighten up a bit
Sure.
probably, but
Yeah, well,
he
and I
doesn't
was able to
wanna do.
Which I don't
volunteer
wanna
for
do,
it, which
but-
was such a
That's so
cool
cool.
experience. It was so cool to volunteer, and maybe one day, because I've only done 2 legit triathlons so far in my triathlon career. I just bought my first bike in May, so we're pretty new to the sport, but one day maybe I'll compete there, so that would be cool. So
that is cool.
Okay, so sorry. Back to your story of how you found us. So
yeah.
You were saying you were home and you were like, I got to do something different, and you had all the time.
All the
during
time,
lockdown.
and so I really just kind of went even more internal on myself and just got really into health and fitness and just the lifestyle of it. And on my fitness Instagram, I would follow all the fitness people that would connect me to other people and whatever. And then I found the sober bodybuilder who led me to the next level experience that you were running. And I just, something in me told me like, I have to do this. Like, I turned on my Instagram notifications because he announced like, I'll announce when the calls will open up, the sales calls. Or do you not call them sales calls? What do you call them?
Discovery
calls. Thank you.
they're
You're not
sales
selling.
calls.
They were sales calls. Right. So I turned on the notifications, and the second they were announced, I signed up and I hopped on a call with Kevin and kind of just told a very brief rundown of my story. And I was like, I have to do this. And you guys dropped the price on me, and I was a first year teacher who
didn't have that.
Doesn't really have the funds. But I was like, somehow I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do this program. And it was the very beginning. I was the first like
official round.
There was one round
beta
before
round,
me.
and then by the time you started, we had slimmed it down from 12 weeks to 8, and did it really specific areas of balance, and included a workbook. And
And I think what drew me to the program was, at that point, I was on a roll of building myself up. And so I thought like I had the health and nutrition side pretty much down. Like I wasn't joining it I was hoping that would build up, but all of the other levels seemed so much more
like what you were missing,
what I was missing. And I had already been working with a nutrition coach leading up to that. And so I was like, well, that will, the nutrition side will help me even more. But I really wanted to, because the levels are emotional, spiritual, mental, spiritual, physical,
relationships, and abundance.
And I think what really drew me in was the relational side, because that was a piece I was really trying to navigate. I had relatively recently ended like a 4-year relationship. That was the entire span of my college career, and I had a great friend group and all of that stuff, but I just was like, I don't think I'm interacting in the relationships in the way I want to and know that I could. And so I think that, on top of the mental and spiritual side too, really drew me in. And I knew I was like a spiritual person. I had kind of fallen away from my religious upbringings, but I knew that I had a spiritual side to me, and I wanted to build on that more and create an identity with that a little bit more. And so, we figured out a little payment plan for me to get into the program. And
we felt connected to you too.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay,
and I was
how do
like,
we make this work?
We gotta get this Elizabeth Meidinger in, this Lizzy Louise.
Yeah. Now you know my whole first, last, middle name. You want to know my confirmation name? I was Catholic. I can throw that one in. It's actually pretty easy to remember. It's also Elizabeth.
That's so good.
Which you shouldn't do. Everyone's like, really? That's your confirmation name? I'm like,
I don't know. I couldn't think of anything else.
I mean, my brother chose his middle name as his confirmation name too. Okay. So we're us Meidingers are pretty creative with our confirmation names.
I'm just going to go with something I can remember.
Very innovative.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm not going back to church anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No, but which I found a lot of solace in church growing up, and my dad was the one that really kept us going, which is interesting because he had converted from Lutheranism to Catholicism. And he kept us going into the church. And in high school, I didn't really go that much, but when I did want to go, I only wanted to go by myself and just like sit in the back and just really connect to the more spiritual side of religion than what the
Yes.
scriptures were saying and all that stuff.
That's what I was going to say too. Like when we talk about the spiritual connection in the work that we do, it has nothing to do with religion, you know. And so you being so introspective, I could see that spiritual connection would mean something to you, not so much the culture of it, or but maybe even the doctrine of it, but that spiritual connection, that peace.
Yeah.
Why? Because white's driving
we love our
core motive
peace.
is peace. And so
for
that
sure.
was a place that you could connect that. And
Yeah.
feel
And I was in a club in high school called Operation Snowball, which was it was a retreat that we would do. And I went on the retreat a couple times. And then I was eventually on like the staff side. Like we had staff and theater. And so like staff ran it. And then the theater would put on skits. We would write our own skits that were like on, relatable topics.
Oh, cool.
And so, you could do like relation conflicts. I wrote some pretty dark and kind of depressing ones. Like I did a cancer one. I wrote like a suicide one. Like I
relate to that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know why I'm writing all these really sad things. But I was eventually on like the theater side, and on the retreats, they were like, Friday to Sunday, we'd go to a camp up in Wisconsin and Wisconsin, and have, different speakers come. And it was a really amazing retreat that we would go on. And one of the days we would talk about like spirituality versus religion. I went to a public high school, so that was kind of my first introduction of spirituality doesn't have to be religious. And I remember we'd like line up in the middle of the room, and it was like, do you think this is religious? Do you think this is spiritual? And like we'd go to one side or the other and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool. Yeah. And we'd have conversations about it and get into our small groups and talk about it. And it was a place for kids to really get raw and real and emotional and talk about their crap. And that was the first time I actually talked about some of the heavy stuff I was going through. And even as a staff member, like we're there to support the participants, but I became a staff member right after the relationship with my dad ended. And I remember on like the second night we do a dance, and like people just have fun and dance. And I remember being in the back room and I just like broke down, like just crying. And a couple guys were hanging out with me, and they're like, who are on the staff with me. They're like, what's wrong? And I just like blurted it all out, and they're like, whoa, like we had no idea you were going through all of this. And because I kept it all to myself, because I don't share, because why? Nobody's there to support me. Nobody needs to know. I don't need to be a burden for people. But that retreat, even though I was leading it, still gave me space to be reflective and like realize all the things I was going through were worth sharing and worth working through. And that was kind of my stepping stone to kind of getting to really wanting to work on it through the next level.
You're like, gosh, I got to dig into this a little deeper.
Yeah. I got to unpack a little bit more so that it's no longer weighing on me, and I can start being a little bit more expansive in my
boy
ways.
Are you. Holy cow, we don't have enough time to explain the expansiveness that you are.
The expansion of Lizzy Louise.
It really is remarkable, because when you started on the calls and you were this mousy voice like, hey, so and it's interesting because you still don't, I mean, you're explaining this and you're articulating it very well, especially for it doesn't come now. Yes, exactly. Exactly. But the thing is that still your strength, but it is rooted in empowerment now rather than fear. So like you still don't feel like you have to like, oh, now I have a voice and I'm going to use it. Now you have a voice, but you're still very wise in where you use it. You don't have to speak up a ton or, command the room or, attract a lot of attention.
Because that's not my nature.
You.
Yeah, my nature is not to be the person that runs the room. Like, it's like, I don't really, like, I could chime in here, but meh.
But it's not
I'm
because,
chilling.
But the root of it isn't because like nobody cares what I have to say. It's not important. It's like, I choose not to. I could, but I'm choosing not to. So
I know I
it's an
can,
empowerment.
I know I
Exactly.
can, but I don't need to. And it's back to kind of my innate nature of like, if I want to speak, I want to speak. And if I don't, I don't. Like, whatever. It's, yeah, exactly.
Well, and now, go ahead.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, now knowing you for
2
years, 2.5
year. Well,
21, February of 21. It's
February of 21. So a year and a half.
year and a half.
year and a half.
It was 21.
Because COVID was 2020.
But
Yeah.
we did it in 2020, didn't we? Or was that the beta round? Oh
Yeah,
my
that was
gosh.
the fall.
But that was the
round.
fall
And then there
round.
was,
Oh,
Okay, so
yeah.
20, so
2.0.
beginning
Yeah.
of 2021.
Yeah,
Okay,
very
so year and a
beginning.
half.
Yep.
yeah, year and a half.
Okay,
We'll just say 2.
this seems like a
No,
lifetime.
year and a half. But
I know it really does, though.
But I would say from my standpoint, and I think I can speak for Alti too, but and she can chime in because we don't limit voices on this podcast.
Yeah, you speak up.
I think it's more of, to me, from what Alti was saying, is you're comfortable in your own skin. Like you are your authentic self, and it's so much different, but so much better, right? Because it just enhanced all of those qualities that we saw when you first joined the program. And we can, I mean, most people can see it, and a lot of people see potential and see possibility and see like, oh, once you open up, and not to just blurt out all information, but once you open up your heart and let that true authentic self out, because that's where that authentic self lives, is in the heart, not in the logic centers in the brain, right? It's in the heart. And once that opened up through the work, now it's like, oh, there's Lizzy. And we saw the transition from the first calls as we went. I just hit the mic. We're really good at hitting the mic.
No, we're not supposed to do that. That's the rule. You can't hit the mic.
Mallory and Blake are like, don't hit the mic. And I hit it every time. Sorry. Anyway,
Shout out to Blue Form Media and their editing talents.
but the transition was so cool to watch. And we can dive back in, but the transition was so cool to watch from someone who didn't speak up as much, and then all of a sudden I hit it again. And then all of a sudden, like, you just, boom, there was Lizzy. And it wasn't this just over commenting and everything like that. But when you spoke, it was like, ooh.
She has thoughts.
Speaking
speaking
from the heart, right?
Right,
And it's just opening up and that place of vulnerability of, this is who I am, and this is what I feel, and this is what I think. And it doesn't matter what other people think, right?
Yeah.
I don't care what you think, because this is where
is
I'm
what
coming
I believe.
from. Right.
And I even remember, like, early on in it, I was on a call with Alti, and one of the questions, she was like, so are you religious? And I was like, yes. Because I was like, I think she wants me to be religious. Like, yes, I am religious. And because it was such a, like, black and white. You either are or you aren't with anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't be somewhere in the middle. So I didn't feel safe
To
to
explain
say
it.
to explain it. So I was like, it's either a yes or a no. Well, you're not no, so you're yes, right? And then eventually I was able whatever you say, yes. You
Is that what you want me to say?
right. And that's how I lived,
Is
is
this
what
trick?
do you want me to
Is this a
say?
trick?
What are they looking for from me? They have an agenda, good, bad, ugly, whatever, but they have some agenda and they want me to be a certain way. So I'm going to do my best to guess what they want me
Some
to
people
be.
pleasing. Yeah.
That was me, and I'm still working through that for sure. But I noticed eventually I shifted, and I was like, no, I'm going to actually say what I believe. And I actually got to figure out what I wanted to believe, because I was so narrow-minded, narrow-focused. A lot of the times I didn't even know what I liked or what I didn't like, because I was so easygoing, and it took it to the extreme of, I don't even know what I like. I just know what other people probably like, so I'll just tell them that's what I like.
Because I'll just tell them that, because it'll be easier for me to almost, I mean, it's not an integrity issue, because you're not like lying, but it's easier for me to pretend to do that and deal with it myself,
Right.
and suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And then to stand in my own power and deal with maybe rejection or deal with conflict.
Yeah, I was non-confrontational.
Or them
I will-
thinking different of me than what I think they
Yes.
like. I want to I want to be cool, or not really cool, but I want them to
Like me.
like me,
Yeah.
approve of me. I don't want to let people down.
Right.
And I think a lot of people do that
relate
through
to
life, or can relate to that, because it's like, well, I don't want to disappoint people, but we've been so conditioned to
right.
please people and make sure that they think highly of us.
And I'm still working through it. Like I had a conversation with my friend the other week. Like I just moved to Salt Lake City this summer. And so, I have a friend group, which is fantastic, but I'm still trying to navigate the friend group. And back then, and even now, I don't want one sole identity, like one thing that I have to be. And so back then I would conform to whatever they wanted me to be because I thought it was the right way to be. And I didn't want to maybe make an obnoxious comment or what I thought would be an obnoxious comment. And then people be like, oh, Lizzy is obnoxious. I didn't want one set identity.
You didn't want to be stereotyped and put in a box.
And so I would just try and figure out what they wanted so that I would fit in with the group and be their stereotype or their identity so that I fit in and I was safe and people liked me. And I, like, a strength of mine is like most people, for the most part like me, or I can fit in with groups naturally, but then I would take it to that extreme of like, I have to fit in. But through going through the next level, I learned like that what I have to say is not so different or crazy. Like people have similar thoughts as me, and what I say isn't going to make people like be like, whoa, like I don't like her. I don't like, it wasn't going to be so reactive to have an opinion. People weren't going to, just stomp on me because I shared an opinion anymore.
Right.